Kirk Herbstreit, Todd Blackledge, Scott Van Pelt here to talk about the Big 12, who says hello to West Virginia and TCU, two teams that will certainly add to the week-to-week flavor in an already talented conference. Oklahoma is tabbed as the top team preseason. Landry Jones is back to play quarterback. It's a schedule.
Impact, I think, on just that overall confidence of Landry Jones. So you have Dominic Whaley coming back. You lose Broyles. They've suspended some players. I want to see where this offense is and if they're ready to make a run to a championship.
See, I think Landry Jones will be much better again this year. I think he'll come back with a little chip on his shoulder. I think Mike Stoops will coach defense with a chip on his shoulder. And I think Bob Stoops will coach with a chip on his shoulder. I like the positioning of Oklahoma coming into this season because they've got talent. And again, I just think they'll have an attitude about it that they've been missing.
They should.
I mentioned the schedule. I think the people in Morgantown are already tailgating in advance. That November visit from the Sooners. All right, you talk Oklahoma, you talk Texas. Last couple of years, inexplicably down. 5 wins, 8 wins. If we set the bar at 9 for the Longhorns this year, Todd, think they'd win fewer or more games than that?
You know, it's very similar. When you think about Texas, I think about Florida when we talked about the SEC. Same situation. Their defense is good enough to win those games. Their defense will be very solid. Quarterback play, whether it's David Ash, whether it's Case McCoy, they've got to be more productive at that position. It's decision-making. It's making plays. If they get production from the quarterback, they can win 9 or 10 games.
And 13 and 12 in the last 2 years. It's amazing. They don't win the big games at home. They've struggled at home, especially in conference play. I had a chance to get down to Austin earlier this summer. This team looks like you would think a Mac Brown team would look based on the recruiting and the resources in Austin. I think Texas has more wins than 9. It's going to come down to that quarterback play. They've got to avoid mistakes, but I think Texas is primed to have a big year.
Speaking of quarterbacks, boy, they got a tough job in Oklahoma State and in Baylor. Brandon Whedon and Robert Griffin III, they move on to the National Football League. Herbie, which quarterback's going to be tougher to replace?
Oh, RG3. You're talking about a dual threat guy, a guy who basically by himself pulled Baylor into the spotlight of college football and got him up to a chance to win 10 games. With all due respect, I think Brandon Whedon's a great player, and obviously starting out for Cleveland Browns. Zach Robinson was a great player at Oklahoma State. We're going to see another great player at Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy. So I think it's RG3.
Well, I agree with that. The only thing I would say that gives Baylor a little advantage is they're replacing RG3 with a senior, with a guy who's got some experience, who's played some games. Oklahoma State's replacing with a true freshman.
Who wins the Big 12? Herbie?
I'm going to say it's still Oklahoma. I agree with what Todd said. This team should have a little bit of a chip, and they should show up angry. And if Bob Stoops gets his team to play angry, there aren't a lot of teams that can play with him.
I think it's Oklahoma, but that end of the schedule, visits to Morgantown and TCU are going to be tough games for them.
Amazing how quickly things change in college football. Look like the Big 12 might implode, dissolve upon itself. Here comes West Virginia, here comes TCU, and the Big 12 are big boys once again.